Hello, my fellow readers. I decided to film my first wrap up. Unfortunately, this week I only got a few books actually finished because I was participating in Tome Topple and I got a little too carried away and read way too many books, like 4 or 5 books, and I only was able to focus on 2 of them. And one of them I technically didn't finish, even though I said I finished on Goodreads. I said I finished it, because but I actually DNF'd it. I didn't finish it. I figured, maybe I would come back to it in the future. But now that I'm thinking about it, I just wasn't as into that book. I wasn't as curious to find out what happens. And that book was actually The Bone Clocks. It was a good book, and I'm not saying you shouldn't check it out, of course. If you all want to check it out, I mean, if you like Cloud Atlas and everything, but part of the problem is it was a library book, and, I only get 2 weeks, and yes, I'm well aware that I could check it out again, recheck it out, and I did, once. But I just wasn't as eager to check it out for a third time, and I wanted to finish reading Name of the Wind, which I was reading. That was the other book I was reading, that ended up being part of one of the books I was able to focus on and finish for Tome Topple. I didn't actually finish it for Tome Topple, but I got pretty far. But I ended up finishing before the end of this month, which will be in a few, I don't know how many days there are in this month. I don't know if there are 30 or 31 days. I would have to check, but I'm being lazy right now and not checking. Plus, it would kind of interrupt my video anyway. See, I'm wearing my friend's t-shirt. I got this from when we were in my thespian troupe. I'm a thespian. Our group went to New York. There was the theater kids go either to at my high school would either go to LA or New York. And we ended up not going to LA. We ended up going to New York. I was a little disappointed because I kind of wanted to go to LA because it's Los Angeles. But New York is just as awesome, and it was the first storytelling, well, not the first, because the first storytelling was, sitting by the campfire and telling stories. But it was the first one that presented the story to an audience, not with just someone narrating, but you actually have actors performing it. And wearing costumes, you have props and stuff. And anyway, I digress. But I got this t-shirt because we went to the studio, the NBC studio, and we saw the set of SNL, Saturday Night Live, which is my dad's favorite sketch comedy show. He has been watching it for years, back since the beginning when it first started. And I got into it too. I don't watch it every Saturday night like he does, but I'll watch a little bit of it sometimes. But anyway, so of course it was the NBC Studios, and I had to get my friend's t-shirt, because I love this sitcom. But anyway, we are talking about what I read this month. I will first talk about the books that I finished. Okay, so the first book I finished was Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And in case you aren't aware, this is a book about the character of Kvothe, and he is narrating to this chronicler the story of his life, the true story, because he has become this legendary figure, and there's all these crazy rumors about him. And he's at a point, and it's been years since, and now he's currently working at a pub, running a tavern, and he's not the same man he was. And then, this mysterious chronicler shows up, or he, saves the chronicler's life. And then he's, convinces Kvothe to tell him his life story. And this is basically about that, how he lost his parents, his years in a traveling theater troupe, how he met this wizard whose name I can't remember, but it would take too long for me to find that name in the book. And he ends up getting to this very famous university where people who practice arcanist magic, and the people he meets throughout his life. And I forgot before that, his parents, the death of his parents, and how that affects him, how that traumatizes him, and then he goes on this missions to find the people who were responsible for that, and he ends up going to the university, which is a famous magical school, for Arcanus, which is their version of magic, and and like what and how basically how some of those rumors about him start, like what is the moment that starts that rumor, and the people he makes friends with, the people he makes enemies with, and the people, and one of the women he falls in love with, his first love essentially, and it is an awesome book. I am in love with this. This is awesome. This is an awesome book. I love the character Quoth. I would so date him if he was a real guy and in my world, or if I could go into his world. And I think, considering the girl he's in love with and everything, and how she kind of treats him sometimes, I mean, I know she's got issues, as they explain in the book, but I think he deserves a little bit better than that girl. I mean, although she doesn't seem that bad, but I mean, and he's clever, he's resourceful, and and there's the fact that he played a musical instrument, and he could sing a little bit. That is totally attractive to me. But I just love the writing style. I can easily follow it, and I can easily I get what's, I can picture everything that's going on. This is just a great book. I am really bad at articulating my feelings about books. That's hence why I wanted to start doing this booktube, because I think I can do better articulating my feelings, or expressing them via a vlog. I mean, of course, my mom might disagree with that, but anyway, and I like how this book is very realistic, and I like how the narrator, how Quoth is all he occasionally breaks the fourth wall a little bit while he's telling the chronicler his life story, and is all if this was, a fairy story, then this would happen and this would happen, but it didn't happen like that. I really think that I like that, and I like how they explain magic. And I like how they explain magic, and I feel like magic is almost like a science. I've always thought that way. Although I have this pet peeve where I don't like people comparing fantasy, supernatural to science fiction, like saying they're the same thing, which they're not. Supernatural and fantasy is more like magic and monsters and demons and vampires and werewolves and, and like wizards and witches and dragons and all that kind of stuff, all that good stuff. While science fiction is time travel, space, going into space, aliens, stuff like that. And although you can have stuff like that mixed into both those genres mixed together a little bit, I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is when people say, it's clearly a supernatural or fantasy show, and then they say, oh no, they refer to it as a science fiction show. I'm really into the show Sleepy Hollow. I really like that one, and one of the actors in an article was quoted referring to the show as science fiction. And to me, yes, he's an actor in the show, but to me, Sleepy Hollow is a supernatural related show. It's not science fiction. I mean, there might be some science referenced in it. There might be a little bit of science fiction mixed in, but it's mostly supernatural stuff. I don't want it to be called science fiction because it is not a true science fiction show. That's just one of my pet peeves. But I do like when they, refer to magic as being like science. And in that case, that is called the Arcanus magic. I think that's how you say it. And I love the idea of this school. It kind of reminds me of Breakbills a little bit, but obviously more medieval, because this world is more of a medieval-like place. But it kind of reminds me of, of Breakbills of that time period. Breakbills as in Breakbills, in case you don't know, I'm referring to the series The Magicians, which I have not read the trilogy, but I watched the show. So I know, so. But anyway, I really like the whole university thing, and I like the characters, even the one girl character that the girl character that Quoth is in love with and everything. I like her. I mean, but I just don't like her for Quoth. I mean, she seems like a decent person, but I feel like she strings him along. I mean, I understand why. You know, I'm not saying that she's an evil bitch or anything, but I mean, I understand why. I get it. But I think I think he needs to find a girl that will, choose him and won't run away all the time and won't, isn't someone that's complicated. Granted, I mean, she has this whole mentality of, when someone's not there, when someone doesn't show up, she thinks they don't want me around, kind of way of thinking. And again, I understand that she's used to being alone and she's a survivor and everything. But I just don't see her I just feel bad that I feel like she'll be the girl, the one that got away, the girl that Quoth will always remember, but she'll not, which, I mean, it's clear he does, in the prison that she has stayed with him. Of course, I hope the way this book starts, I hope that doesn't mean that Quoth doesn't ever end up with anybody, that he doesn't come close. But anyway, okay, I just realized I'm already pretty far into this video, so I'm going to stop talking about this one. But I just love this book, and I would recommend it to any fantasy members. And I also like to thank Peruse Projects, Reagan at Peruse Projects, for recommending this book, because she's kind of one of the reasons why I decided to read this book. Because I just love her recommendation. I trust her, and I've been very into the books that she's recommended, and I very much trust it. She is one of the booktubers whose judgment I trust. There are quite a few of the booktubers on here that I really love, and I totally agree with their opinions. Or at least if I haven't read the books that they recommend, I am very much into the books that they have recommended. Or I am very much curious about them, the way they describe them. Okay, so that is really one of the only few books I actually finished. Okay, so the other two books I finished this month were just recently finished. I got them from the library. They were books I borrowed when I returned the Bone Clocks. Again, that was when I did IDNF, which it was a good, interesting story, but I just wasn't as into it, and I wasn't into it to the point of, yes, I am going to borrow it for a third time. I figured maybe I'll change one day, I'll want to read it again, borrow it again, or maybe one day I'll decide to buy it. I definitely, I want to read the author's other book. This is the same guy who wrote Cloud Atlas. I do want to read that book. I still kind of do, but I don't know if I'm into. I don't know if I will or not. I might. I mean, part of the problem was how the book was set up. I just did not, it made it seem a lot longer, and because it wasn't the most exciting or thrilling story, it was more about characters than anything, more about people, particularly the female protagonist of the story, this main girl who had this special gift. She could hear these voices in her head, that she dubbed the radio people, and it was basically about her and the interaction she had, the connection she makes throughout her life, and how this psychic ability of hers follows her whole life because of that. And how it affects all the people around her, like her husband, her daughter, her parents, her siblings. She ends up publishing a book about it, and then she meets another writer and becomes friends with him. And it kind of affects him too, and it's a very interesting. It was an interesting story, and I would say if you want to check it out, go check it out. I'm not, just because I wasn't as into it doesn't mean you won't be. But, part of the problem was, not only was I not as into it, I wasn't super into it, but also the way it was set up, I did not like. It was divided into sections Like the first section focused on the protagonist, the woman with the girl with the gift, the psychic power, and then the other sections started to focus on the people in her life and how it affected them, how her and this gift of hers affected them. And then, like, throughout each chapter, there were, like, these specific dates that were significant events that revolve around the whole plot and everything. And it got to the point where I was just flipping through the pages a little bit ahead of the pages, just to see how much farther I have to the next section where I can, like, take a break and stop. But like I said, I'm not gonna tell you not to check it out. I'm not gonna say that you shouldn't read it, because you might actually like it. It wasn't my thing. And I don't know if I'm gonna read it ever, if I'm gonna ever try it again. But like I said, I would like to read the author's other book, Cloud Atlas. I am kind of curious about that one. Or at least I'll see the movie version of it. Of course, book versions are usually, people always say book versions are better. But anyway, like I said, I returned that one. Oh, let me go ahead and talk about the other library book that I don't have with me. The Dragon of Handel. I was gonna say Harendel, but it's not Harendel. That's from another place, another book. You see, that's a Lord of the Rings reference. But the Dragon of Handel, a mystery book, a medieval mystery book, about this widowed woman, this woman who just became a widow recently at some point. This is the 5th book in the series. It's a series, but I think but the way it's written, I feel like it could potentially be a standalone. But of course, there are probably things in the book that it would help if you read the other 4 books, like background on the characters and whatnot, the main characters. But it was, like I said, it's a medieval mystery, and this widowed woman who has joined a convent. She's part of a priory in England. I don't know historically what was the event. That's one of the things that was a little struggling for me, is knowing what was going on historically at the time of the book. The book is set in. There were some political wars going on, essentially. It's in England. The book takes place in England. Anyway, this woman, Hildegard, I think that's how you say her name. I don't know. She took this recent trip to, I think it was Spain, somewhere in Spain, and then she comes back. And she's kind of trying to decide if she wants to continue being essentially a nun. I think that's what they were. And so the head of her priory is like, okay, why don't you go to this place, Handel, and take your time to think it over. This is an isolated priory, and it's quiet, and you can, think for yourself what you want to, if you want to continue this life. So she goes there, and of course, it's not as quiet as she thinks, because someone was murdered on the grounds of Handel Priory. One of the, these workers that were working on building, these workers that were trying to build this facility for the prior, I can't remember, the head of the order, the head of the nun order. They were building this facility for her, in honor of her, something like that. And there was a murder on the premise, one of the workers, and that people believed that the guy was murdered by the Dragon of Handel, the dragon that haunts these woods. But Hildegard does not believe in that kind of stuff. So right away, she gets a little suspicious and decides to investigate. But the mother of the order, the abbess of the order, Basilda, I don't not remember how to say her name. She does not like Hildegard. She doesn't trust her. And she also thinks Hildegard is ruining, the way she runs her convent is that it's a convent for those women who have committed sins, and they are punished by being sent to this convent. And the punishments, and Hildegard realized the punishments are a little harsh, and there's so much distrust, and you don't know, as you read this book, you don't know who to trust, but I guess that makes a good mystery. And also, she thinks she doesn't trust the Lord that patrons this convent, and she is starting to suspect that he and Basilda, the head of the order, are working together on something, and she suspects that he's selling off the nuns, as brides for other lords and whatnot, and she starts to suspect, and there's this tower in the middle of the forest that might be holding some illegal goods for the war that has to do with the war that's going on, political war that's going on. So it's just, so basically she's dealing with that mystery and proving that the dragon isn't real, and like finding out who killed that man, and the patron of the order, and trying to protect the nuns that are being sold off as brides, and just so it was interesting. It was kind of fun, it was kind of dull at times. And but it was pretty good. It's by Cassandra Clark, and like I said, it's a series. So if you like historical fiction mysteries set in like the medieval period, then you might want to check out Cassandra Clark's work. Okay, so now back to that was the other book I finished. Now back to the ones that I have with me, which I will have to take back in a few days, but I'm waiting because I have family visiting. I have my grandmother who's staying for a week, so I'm going to wait to return it. I might return it, I might return it even when she's still here and just not stick around, but I also kind of wanted, volunteer to read the shelves, as in checking out the shelves, making sure they're organized and it's not and the books aren't out of order. I want to volunteer my services for that, but that means I don't want to stay but with my grandmother visiting, I don't want to stay in the library for too long. But at the same time, I feel bad that I've gone there twice now to return books and I haven't volunteered since. So, I might wait until the actual date instead of returning them early. I might wait until the actual date these books are due back and return it then. And which by that time, my parents will be taking my grandmother back home, and I'll probably stay home and hang out because I am 27-year-old, so I obviously can stay home by myself, duh. I just can't drive, which is a whole other story. But again, I digress. I have a habit of going off on tangents in these videos, and that's why my videos tend to be so long. So I'm going to get back to what I'm actually talking about, which is my reading wrap-up for this month. Okay, so I decided to read this series. At first, I wasn't going to. I was just going to watch the new show on Netflix, but then I decided, this is at my library, so I may as well borrow it. I like how the library has these books because I can check them out and decide if I want to buy it. And I don't like buying, and I don't want to have a whole collection of younger books, on my shelf. Nothing against kids' books, but it's just kind of weird, having kids' books, a whole collection. And plus, my mom is always giving me a hard time. My mom and dad are always giving me a hard time about having that I have way too many books. And in fact, when we moved last fall, my mom wanted me to before we actually moved, my mom wanted me to go through my books and get rid of some of them. I know, blasphemous, but I have way too many books, and I buy more books than I read. Before I get through any of the books I've had for years, I buy more books because as soon as I'm in the bookstore, I just have to buy. Like today, we were in the next little town, and we went to visit because there was like a craft fair going on. And like I said, my grandmother's visiting, so my dad decided to take us to this craft fair. And there is a country bookstore in that little town, so I went there while they were walking around a little bit. And I bought Assassin's Blade from the Throne of Glass series, because I hadn't read that yet. Anyway, like I said, I gotta stop getting off on tangents, so this video doesn't turn out to be really long. So I started reading this, and I'm going to read all 13 of these books. And this was the first, and I've read one of the books. I think it was The Reptile Room. I read that book, but it's just, I don't know if I ever finished it, if I got into it or not. It was just a random book that I got from my school library that I borrowed, because in elementary school I borrowed books from the library. But, after elementary school, by middle school, on to college, I stopped borrowing from the library. I didn't like that because I didn't get to keep them. I didn't get to read them as long as I did. And I think that might be why a lot of books at the time in elementary school, I didn't finish. There were some books I didn't finish. The ones I borrowed from the library, I didn't always finish. But I read that book, but I haven't read any of these books since. So I decided, I saw these at the library. I saw the library had all 13, and I decided to check it out. So far, and like I said, I really enjoyed it. It was a quick read because, it's a kid's book. It's originally for kids, so the writing was very simplistic, and it was a, quick, short chapter book. Not super long, not super detailed, and straight to the point. And I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It was a fun little read, and it was very amusing at times. And probably the parts that were meant to be a little scary and creepy, or a little scary and intimidating, I thought they were kind of funny. I mean, like, when Count Olaf was like, he asked the Baudelaire children, in case you don't know, the Baudelaire children, these three kids, Violet, Klaus, and Sunny, their parents died in this horrible fire, and the parents' will specifies that they go to a relative, and apparently Count Olaf is considered a relative, and they go to him, and they go to live with him. He's kind of a jerk. He's a horrible father, a horrible parent figure, and he's obsessed with getting his hands on their fortune, and he's very arrogant and self-centered, and he doesn't care about the children, and he's an actor. He has his own theater troupe, and in one of the chapters, and he leaves the children notes he leaves the children notes every morning to do all these chores, and one morning the note said, "I want you to make dinner for my theater troupe." So the kids are forced to go to the grocery store with the help of their kindly neighbor, Justice Strauss. They have to find a recipe, because Count Olaf did not specify what he wanted them to make. Not according, And so they decided to make this special sauce for a pasta. But then when they get home, Count Olaf finds out that they did not make roast beef, which is what he and his troupe wanted. But he didn't tell them that. And to me, that is hilarious. That is ridiculous. And it also pisses me off. It also, of course, pisses me off, which it should. You're supposed to get angry. But it was just ridiculous. I was yelling saying, "Dude, you didn't specify." That's what I do when I'm reading a book. I often yell out loud. I'm like, or react out loud. I mean, my mom thinks it's weird, but I think a lot of book readers do something like that. They react out loud. And the same with TV shows and movies. I react out loud, and I'm like, "No," or "Don't do that," or "No, why'd you do that?" Or like, I react like that. And, I thought that part was kind of funny, that and being like, "Dude, seriously? You didn't even tell them." But I really enjoyed this book. I liked how the author included pictures, cute little cartoonish pictures, and the villain was perfect. He was scary and intimidating and rather amusing, and and I like how, I love how, like, the author, defines things, like when Sunny speaks, because she's a baby and she doesn't know how to speak that well. She doesn't really know how to speak yet, or she knows very few words, so whenever she says something, sometimes the author will explain that. And when he uses bigger words, he kind of defines the words in context of the book. And I like how throughout the book he kind of warns the reader that this book does not have a happy ending. So if you don't want to continue, if you want a book with a happy little fairy tale ending, then do not read this book. Um, and I like how, another thing I like is how Violet, she is an inventor, she's clever, she's resourceful. Like, like at one point, Sunny gets captured by Count Olaf and held over, held up in his tower in a cage, and Violet is the one that goes to rescue her, or tries to, and fails. She's a good example for young girls. She is, she's not some damsel in distress. She's not that innocent, silly little younger sister. Although she's older, she's the oldest sibling, so she kind of has to be. And she has to take care of her brother and sister. But she is the perfect, she's the perfect, example for young girls. And I like how Klaus is. I love how Klaus loves to read, because I love to read, and obviously all people on BookTube do. But I really like how he does, how he loves reading, and he's passionate about knowledge. I think that's really, I think that's important to teach kids that books are not that bad. I know a lot of kids, there are a lot of kids, especially today, who just can't get into reading. Or either that, or they weren't taught very well because the school system isn't very good. And they spend most of their time on their devices. Granted, all of us older kids do that too. All of us older kids and women, older men and women, we get onto our devices all the time too. But I mean, reading is just as important, and I like how Klaus reads. And Sunny is just cute and adorable, and she's feisty. I like that she bites. She's just too cute, and this was a great first book to the series. There are a lot of things that I liked about this book. I think it's almost easier, hard and easy to rate a children's book, because it's kind of not just like a classic. You got to be careful with, it's a little unfair how I feel a little like, at least for me, just like a classic. I have a hard time rating this book, but at the same time, it's easier to find things about it. Or maybe it's just this book in particular. It was easier for me to find things to put in my review, because I not only am on here now, but I also write reviews for a local magazine, book reviews. My first actual published works, that's not my high school newspaper. And this was a book I started to review, and I'm going to give it to the editor. And that way it will give like a variety of reviews, and also, since there's kids that live in that neighborhood, little kids, and they'll have a book to consider. Of course, with the way I review it, it's more, I don't know if a kid won't be able to, maybe like 10th or 12, anyway, maybe I'm just badly judging them, but yeah, this is a great book, and I hope to continue reading the other 12 books. Okay, now, the next book I finished, Caraval. I finally read it. I finally got it. Got my hands on it. Thankfully, the library had this book. I was surprised because I didn't think the library got the more recent reads, the more recently published books. But it does have a few of the newly published books. See, new sticker. But I wasn't sure if I wanted to read it because there were some criticisms it got. And I wasn't sure if it would be my kind of book, but I was totally wrong. This is my kind of book. I enjoy this book. I love this book, and I think I gave it 5 stars. I gave the bad beginning 5 stars too. But I mean, like I said, I feel like it's hard to be critical of a kid's book. In the case of that one. But in the case of this one, I gave it 5 stars. I love this book. It was such fun. I love the Caraval. I want to go there. I want to go. I want to participate even. A part of me wants to be part of that game, but then a part of me is like, no, that's a dangerous game. That's a scary game. And, you can't trust anyone. You might not, it will be hard to find any allies unless you go with, like, a family member or close friend. But that game can be kind of dangerous. I know that they said only one person died in years or whatever, and that's why they stopped. But anyway, I love this book. I love the mystery and the magic of this book, and I love the historical time period. And I mean, I don't know if it's actual historical as in our world historical, but it kind of had stuff that was based on 1800s kind of story, And I love the story. I really enjoyed the characters. And I'm curious I am obsessed with who Legend is. We never find that out. And I want to know who he is. Because, okay, I kind of spoiled for you guys. Sorry, that's a spoiler. But we never really find out who Legend is. We never meet him. So I hope in the next, because this says it's the first book at least on Goodreads, it seems to be the first book in a series. So I guess there will be more books coming out. I hope, unless it's one of those books where it's a one-hit wonder kind of thing. But I really hope the next book comes out soon, if there is going to be a next book. But I am definitely curious about that. I mean, the way it ended, it's clear there's got to be another book. There's got to be a second book. But this was an awesome book. I loved all the characters. I love the writing style. Like I said, I wanted to be a part of Caraval, or at least watch it, be able to go to the island and view it as an audience member. But like I said, I do. Another practical, sensible part of me is like, this is dangerous. Even if this wasn't a work of fiction and there was a real Caraval, that is dangerous, scary. And I love how this book had romance in it. Like, I'm not a huge pure romance story. I mean, I've read classics like Gone with the Wind and Jane Eyre. I love those books. So I like romance, but the modern romances of today, although I went through a whole Nicholas Sparks phase where I read all of his books. But his books kind of got repetitive, but basically I don't like pure romance books most, especially the modern ones of today, even if they are historical fiction. But I like romance in my other genres. Like, I like romance in my fantasy. In fact, I want to be an author someday, and I will often put for my ideas often, have romance. My characters the ideas in the characters also often have romance in them. All of them do. All my ideas always have like a love story as part of the plot. But I love the romance. And I have to say, Scarlet and Donatella kind of reminded me of Agatha and Sophie. In the way they related to each other. And their personalities. Kind of like, Donatella reminded me of Sophie, and Agatha and Scarlet reminded me of Agatha. Except for, I think, Sophie and the school, and I'm referring to the School for Good and Evil trilogy, those characters, Agatha and Sophie. Sophie, I feel like, was a little more selfish than Donatella was. I mean, there were times when Donatella seemed selfish. But then you slowly start to realize, know that she's not as selfish as we think. But Sophie is also younger than Donatella. But I don't know, and maybe Scarlet's a little more cautious than Agatha, I don't know. But, I mean, they're also younger than those characters. Of course, I understand why Scarlet is so cautious. But I just love this book. This is so awesome, and I'm so glad I read it. And I probably, at some point, I might buy it. And I don't know, it might be one of those books I'll need to buy for myself. Either that, or I just won't tell my mom if she helps me buy it online. Because, like I said, I don't put my stuff on sites like Amazon. So, oftentimes she has to help me if I want to order books online. And I just won't tell her that I ever read the book, because she always has this response of, why, if you've already read it, why do you need to buy it? Like, I wanted to buy another copy of the book It, because my copy is kind of ruined, my original copy of It, and I wanted to order another copy, but she was like, well, if you already have it, And it was intact enough that I could still read it, but it was kind of a little torn at the bottom, and the pages were folded and curled, and just it didn't, and the cover was torn off and everything. So it was like I definitely wanted a new one, but like when I asked my mom to order it for me because she asked me if there was anything on Amazon that she could order for me one day, and I knew that there was new editions that came out for the book It, Stephen King's It. That's what I'm referring to, and she said, "You already have the book. Why do you need another copy?" Even when I said it was kind of ruined, which I understand, the price of books adds up eventually. But so I ended up buying for myself at the store. It wasn't the copy that I necessarily wanted. I wanted the copy that was like trade back with a glossy finish. It was all white with the word It in red, and there was a smile that looked like kind of like Ronald McDonald type of smile, but it was more, with teeth, and it was scary looking, not as friendly as Ronald McDonald. And that's the copy I wanted, but that it was expensive. That was like really pricey, so more than $20. And like I said, I have this weird thing. I won't spend $20 or more on a book. I mean, I've made exceptions, but I try to avoid that. That's why I always get mass paperback, because they're a little cheaper. And I bought, I ended up buying the edition that I have is really nice. It's gray. It's a grayish with a clown's face in the middle, and this little, and the words are written in red. So it's a nice edition, and it's cool. I think it's like the next version. The after mass paperback, B paperback or something. I think it's called like B paperback or something. So it's a little bit stronger than the material that mass paperback books are made out of, but it's not as nice as trade paperback or hardback. But it's a good condition, and I just need to be careful and not let it get ruined. But anyway, so basically, if I decide to get this book for myself, which I really want to at the moment, then I'll have to buy it myself at the bookstore. And I might wait until it comes out in paperback. So at least I've read it. So this is a great book. Okay, so those are the books I finished. Oh, no, and, okay, here are some of the books I didn't finish, but I read this month. I read this, Three Musketeers, because I was kind of into the idea of reading the 7 books that take place in the 1700s, that time in France. Mainly because of, I saw Beauty and the Beast twice, and I realized it's in the 1700s, the aristocracy of France and all that, and I used to think that was, the original animated movie gave me the impression that it was in the 1600s, but I think it was in the 1700s, according to the movie, which I love, because I love how it's more, that movie, one of the things I loved about that movie, that version of the original story, was that it was so much more authentic to authentic to that setting. It made it more obvious. So anyway, I started reading The Three Musketeers, but as you can see, I didn't get very far. But I am familiar with the story because I've seen the movie versions. I watched a little bit of the TV show, the BBC show. I think it's BBC show. But I only got to chapter 5, basically when D'Artagnan arrives in Paris with the intention to be a musketeer, but he has an incident, and when he goes to this tavern, this guy steals from him, and after they get into a brawl, because I think he he does something to upset the guy, and they get into this brawl, and the guy knocks D'Artagnan out and steals from him, essentially. So he chases after the guy and ends up going to the city, to try, and then, tries to find him while at the same time going to the guy who runs the Musketeers. But of course he doesn't have the paper that he wanted to present, because that was one of the things the guy stole from him, was the document that reveals who he is and why he should be a musketeer and everything. And when he gets there, the guy is like, okay, I can't take you on right now, but maybe you can do some things to prove to me you are worthy to be a musketeer. So, and that gets D'Artagnan upset, and when he's, walking off in a huff and all angry and stuff, then he runs into the three main other guys in the story. Like, he's, and he kind of gets into trouble with those guys, and, there's this, and they decide to challenge, all three guys end up challenging D'Artagnan to a duel, at different times, one right after the other. So that's as far, and I got, so that's as far as I got. It's pretty good. I mean, unfortunately, because of when it was written, it's kind of, the writing is kind of dry, but it's pretty good story. It's pretty interesting so far. Of course, I know what's going on because I've seen, like I said, I've seen the movies. So, but, I mean, like I said, I didn't get very far in it. I only got to chapter 5, but it's okay. I mean, it just might take me a long time to read this book, because it's just, I am definitely interested in reading it, but it is a super long book. See how thick this baby is? And like I said, the writing, considering when it was written, it's very wordy and dry. But I do want to read it. And unfortunately, and I have to say though, the character's kind of annoying. The four main guys, D'Artagnan, Aramis, Athos, and Porthos, I kind of, when I'm reading it, I was kind of rolling my eyes, because they are so dramatic and arrogant, and it's just, but I mean, of course, they were the same way in the movies, but I mean, it's even more prominent in this book, the little bit I've read. It's like, oh my god, get over it, who cares? I mean, but then again, considering the time period, maybe this is how people were, and, they always lived life dramatically. But it just might take me a long time to continue with this. Oh, and look, see, the bookmark I'm using is the actual, it's the Beauty and the Beast bookmark. This, because I just had to get it. And it's, and I'm using it because, both books are set in the same time period. Okay, next, I also started reading Clash of Kings by George R. Martin. I had read the first two books and part of the third book a few years ago, but then I took too long of a break, so I decided I need to reread both books. Unfortunately, my focus isn't entirely on this book right now. I'm reading another book. At the moment, I think I got hair in my mouth. So it's definitely, so I didn't get very far in this book. I tried to read this book, this one's just like The Three Musketeers and this one were both books I tried to read for Tome Topple, but that didn't go well. And, The Name of the Wind was a book that I was probably going to have a better chance of finishing it. I didn't finish it by the end of Tome Topple, but, I mean, I got really close with that one. But this is really good, and I don't need to tell you, I'm sure I don't need to tell you what this one is about. But this one is really great. I mean, I got as far as, page, in my edition, I'm as far as page 145, and right now it's this one of Davos Seaworth's parts. This might be the first one we go to since the prologue, because he's in the prologue, I think. Or maybe he's at least mentioned. I don't know. But I think this might be his first. This section is his first. Is the first one where we meet his character in person. Actually, no, he is in the prologue, because there's another character who meets him. The character who dies in the prologue. Actually, the two interact. Unfortunately, that character, not Davos, but this other character dies. I think he was the maester of Stannis Baratheon. I think he was his maester. But then he ends up getting, apparently he ends up being judged by the the red woman's god. I can't remember what, the Lord of Light. He's apparently judged because he does not like the red woman. But he essentially dies. That character. So he's in the prologue, but this is the first chapter of his, that's his section. Yeah, I think. And we got to Tyrion's, and is now the hand of the king and doing all these things, again. And we also, Arya is kind of traveling with that group and having to pretend that she's a boy, and the king's men come after Gendry. I don't know how to say his name. And we are at the point where Robb is like trying to get rid of his mother because he doesn't want to need his mother, because she'll baby him and she'll tell him what to do, and he, in his mind, is a grown man and a king now, so a king does not need their mommy. Which I can understand, but at the same time, the young Robb is very, like Joffrey, he's very brash. He's very irrational and makes decisions impulsively, I feel like. And his mom, and Catelyn, is very clear-headed and, is very cautious the way she should, and she is giving her son, good advice. But of course, he's an arrogant 15-year-old boy who's like, I don't want to listen to my mommy. I'm a king now. Of course, Joffrey's worse. But, so that's how far I've gotten in this book. But I really love this series. I love the George R. R. Martin's writing style. And he's and as I said in the previous Top 5 Wednesday, he's an author I would love to read more from. I love to read his other books. Okay, I think that's all the books. Yeah. Okay, all the books I've read this month. But, I also finally started reading this book. This one, A Court of Mist and Fury. I started that one today. This is the book I brought with me to the pool, because we have a community pool here. And the pool is already open, because we live in one of the warmer states. One of the states that's farther down south. So the pool opens a little early. The community pool here opens a little earlier than it would in my old state I used to live in. It's very nice. So I decided to bring this with me, along with, I brought The Clash of Kings, but I just could not get to that book. I was very exhausted from all the swimming I did, and I was really into this book. I have got as far as chapter 12. To me, that is pretty, with the YA books, I definitely get through those a lot faster. That's why possibly this month, I might read some of my YA books, like The Raven Boys and Siege and Storm. I might end up reading those as part of my TBR for this coming month, because that is, along with probably the next book in a series of unfortunate events. I'll continue that through May. Since May is also my birthday month, so there's a lot of series I'm really excited about that I want to read the next book in the series during my birthday month. The book in the series during my birthday month, I want to read it. Which by the way, those are the people that read the Throne of Glass series. I just read the first 3 books. So would it make, I guess I can look it up, but would it make sense to read some of the books in Assassin's Blade now before I read Queen of Shadows? Or should I have read it even before I read Air of Fire? Please, if anyone could tell me, could anyone recommend, should I read? I guess you'll probably say yes, because she's looking for, as of Air of Fire, she has decided to look for her old teacher, Oberyn, I think that's how you say his name. She's gonna go look for him, so maybe I should. Those of you who have read that series, Would you agree? Like I said, I'm asking about Throne of Glass. Should I start reading some of the Assassin Blade stories before I read Queen of Shadows? That's what I'm asking. I hope you guys can understand me, because I'm not always 100% clear. So I am loving this book. This is so awesome. Like I said, I got through the first 12 chapters while I was at the pool. I just couldn't stop reading it. I had to read, I have this thing where I can't stop at an odd chapter. I mean, sometimes I do, because, if I'm tired or whatever and I'm losing concentration, then I will, or, I'm in bed reading, then, yeah, I will stop at an odd chapter. But most of the time, I don't know why, I have this weird quirk where I cannot stop at odd number chapters. I have to read two more chapters. So, I have to read, so I have to stop at chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 6, chapter 8, so on and so forth. I don't know, it's just this weird thing I have, this weird little pet peeve of mine. So I always have to read 2 chapters. I can't just read one, unless it's like a book like this, or a book like this one. Sometimes I'm willing to read just one chapter and take a break after that. Although, of course, with the Song of Ice and Fire books, they don't have chapter numbers. They just have names, characters. So it's a little easier to do that, but then I always try to read at least 2 chapters. Because I can't sit, I mean, depending on the book, sometimes I can't always just sit through, spend all day reading. Because I don't, I like to get up and do other stuff. Because I feel like, I go running every day, except for the last 2 days I haven't gone running because I've been using the pool. What was I saying? So I just, how I can't sometimes, oftentimes I can't always sit and spend all day sitting in a chair reading a book. I have to go running, and I have a Facebook account, of course. I do BookTube now, and I have a blog, and I have a Tumblr now, and before you know it, I'll get a Twitter account. Of course, if my parents have anything to say about it, they'll say no. They won't want me to get a Twitter account. And some of the, I remember some horror stories on Twitter, from people's experiences on Twitter, so I'm not sure. I mean, the only reason I would go on there probably is to communicate briefly with some of the actors I really, really like. If they have a Twitter account. So, I go running every day. I go on Facebook. I watch BookTube videos. We eat meals, of course. I also love watching TV shows and movies and stuff, so I take time to do, that was my first ever addiction, was watching TV. So I would spend, so I still do that. I remember when I was younger, my grandma also used to tell me, the one who's visiting actually, would tell me that TV will turn my brain to mush. Because I watch way too much TV, so she was worried. But then I moved on. And found other things to be addicted to, like buying books and watching YouTube videos and being on Facebook. So I love this book. My frustration, though, is A Court of Thorns and Roses was supposed to be kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I'm a huge fan of Beauty and the Beast, and I was spoiled that Tamlin becomes of course first of all, in A Court of Thorns and Roses, there were some things that Tamlin did that I just did not like. I get why she fell in love with him and everything, but when he's doing that special ceremony thing where he's becoming this tapping into his instinct and becoming more of a fairy, more natural fairy and stuff, and then he warns Freya. He's like, I don't want you to go out because there's a special ceremony going on that you can't be part of because, you're human and I'll be drawn to and I might attack you and hunt you down. And I mean, that's the whole thing. This whole special ceremony thing is him. There's a female fairy that they will send out and he has to hunt her down and he will sexually ravish her and stuff. And something like that. And so, Tamlin warns Freya, don't go out because he's already drawn to her and she's a human. So he's like, I might, if I smell your scent, then I might I'll probably come after you. And I get it that she wasn't supposed to go out. And of course, because every heroine in those kind of books tends to make dumb decisions. And that's why I don't ever criticize those heroines for doing those things, because I feel like all of them kind of have those moments where they make dumb decisions. And she goes out there because she's kind of frustrated about being locked up in her room. And which that is essentially an issue, I feel like, with him. He's so overprotective, which that I will get to that point in a minute. That's the thing that bugs me in this book about his character. And then she ends up going outside, but she almost gets assaulted by some of the other male fairies that are really like, ooh, this is a little tasty little girl. And she gets rescued by Rhysand. This is where we first meet him, but at the time you don't know who he is. But he rescues her, and he ends up sending her back into the Spring Palace. But Tamlin catches her scent anyway, and corners her, and tries to sexually assault her, because he's not in control of himself. And then she ends up getting blamed for it. I feel like he blames her for it, like it's all her fault. And yes, maybe it was dumb of her to go out there and not listen to him. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's not entirely her fault, but he can't be all blaming her completely for it. That bugged me. I hate when the characters, whether it's a guy with a girl or a villain with a hero, being all like, you made me do this, it's your fault, the person that's like very controlling and manipulative and being like, this is your fault, you made me do this, and not taking any credit whatsoever for their bad choice. And like I said, that story is based loosely, and yes, very loosely, on Beauty and the Beast, but it still kind of irks me, because it's like, Beauty and the Beast is my favorite story, and the Beast character is not like that. I mean, yes, he acts like a petulant child in both the animated version and this version, this 2017, and I feel like Rumpelstiltskin, which is in Once Upon a Time, if you've never seen that show, it's basically a show of all the fairy tales mixed together and everything, and they all interact, all those characters interacting, and they're all cursed and sent to our world, and, blah, blah, blah. I have a love-hate relationship, and I can't, I can't talk about that show. I mean, this video is already pretty super long. But anyway, so in that version, they designed, because I guess they couldn't really make a physical beast like in the movies. So they kind of do it metaphorically speaking with the character of Rumpelstiltskin, because he was like, in their version of Rumpelstiltskin, he was a man that got cursed became the Dark One, so he becomes Rumpelstiltskin, the character Rumpelstiltskin, the guy who spins straw into gold, and, is like, asks for, makes deals with people and whatnot. And so he also ends up being the Beast in that one. He ends up being Belle's Beast. Which, by the way, the way they treat Beauty and the Beast is, now the way they treat that couple is partly one of the major reasons why I no longer watch Once Upon a Time. And I'm no mood to be judged by that, and I'm no mood to explain why. Okay, so I've had like a couple years now where I've had to deal with that, and so I don't want to deal with that again. But I bring it up because that's another version of the Beauty and the Beast storyline. So, in that one, even Rumpel was a bit of a petulant child as the Dark One. He kind of had that bit of an attitude. And the original Rumpelstiltskin was kind of like that too, in the fairy tale version that I've heard. But he's not aggressive and sexually controlling. Of course, this series is a very adult teenage series. So, well, more adult, but young adult into adult series. So it's gonna be different. I know that, and it's only based loosely, and there's like lots of loose references and stuff, and like, but it's still it just bugged me. And now I hear that I got spoiled a little bit and got bits and pieces, not exactly what happens in this book, but I've been told, because of watching booktube videos, I've heard that Tamlin becomes kind of a possessive jerk. And I'm already starting to see that in this book. I've only read up to chapter 12. But as I read, I was just basically shaking my head and be like, Tamlin, dude, you can't protect her forever. And of course, Freya is a good person and loves Tamlin. So of course she's like, okay, I'll let him off the hook. He's been through a lot too. He suffered a lot. I mean, he was cursed by Amaranthian. I don't know how to say her name. I hope that's correct. He was cursed by her, and he's a good guy. He loves her and wants to protect her. And yes, he has good intentions. And I believe, and I can understand Freya's hesitancy and being like, okay, I'm not going to be too hard on him. Because yes, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I understand why he's being this way. But it's, there are moments when she snaps. There are moments when she gets pretty angry and feels like, you gotta lay off, dude. I love you and everything, but, you gotta back off. And I understand why she doesn't trust Rhysand, because, of course she and, why she doesn't trust him and everything, and, why she's not willing to, like, and she's very hesitant to, like, anything he says, she's not going to be like, jump, she's not going to want to listen to him, because she sees him as a bad guy. Because to Tamlin, he's a bad guy. But, so far, I'm loving this book. And like I said, it's definitely a book that I had to keep reading. And I'm definitely going to read more tonight when I get in bed. This was a book I wanted to start in May, but of course I didn't want to wait. May would be here soon. I don't know how many days are in April. I don't know if there's 30 or 31 days. I don't know. So I don't know if tomorrow will be May or not. I guess I'll find out when I look at a clock tonight at midnight, because I go to bed. I make sure I'm in bed at midnight at 12 a.m. because I'm trying to stick to the habit, especially if whenever I get a job, which will hopefully happen at some point. Whenever I get a job, hopefully I want to keep into sticking with habits. Plus, I'm also kind of a person who likes routines anyway, so, I mean, sometimes I deviate from my routines, but most of the time I'm a very routine person. But anyway, so I just really love this book, and I can't wait to read more of it. And this will be on my May TBR, along with, like I said, I think Siege and Storm and the Raven Boys will be on my TBR too, because they look like books I could get through easily. And Fallen Kingdoms might be on there too. Like I said, these are books that I'm really excited about. I want to keep reading them. And then there's two other books I kind of want to start, the Lightbringer series, The Black Prism. I just got that book. And I kind of want to start, Mistborn, The Final Empire, but I don't know, because I already have a lot of books that are really long, that might take me a while to read. Like I said, I'll probably continue with Clash of Kings. I don't know if I'll continue with Three Musketeers just yet. And I didn't get very far in it, so I don't feel as bad if I take a long break between that one. But if I take too long, I might start from the beginning with that one. Clash of Kings, and I might read North and South by Elizabeth Glass-Kell, that was another book I started this month. But I couldn't use it for Tome Topple because it's not over 500 pages. It's not, by the way, like I said, it's the book by Elizabeth Glass-Kell, and it's based on that, that BBC miniseries that's by the same name is based on that book, obviously. So I need to continue that one. But with those kind of books, even if it's not like over 500 pages, especially if it's classic historical, it still might take me a long time to read. But I probably need to get in the habit of reading these books, those kind of books, like setting a number of pages to read. That's something that I was watching one of those classic, how to read a classic video, booktube videos, and someone said you should set, schedule a number of pages you'll read every day. That way you can get through it. So I might do that. But anyway, I'm loving this book, and I can't wait to continue it. I don't know when I'll get A Court of Wings and Ruin. That might be a book I might just ask for as a gift around Christmas time. Or I might just have to, or I might buy it myself. Of course, it will first come out in this form. I don't know how long it will be, because this still hasn't come out in paperback. That's kind of what I was waiting for at first, but then I decided, you know what the hell, I want to read it. I want to get to it, because I keep hearing about it on BookTube. So, anyway, this is really a really long video. But anyway, so that is basically my reading wrap up for April. And I mentioned, I mentioned some of the books that might be on my TBR next month, because next month is my birthday month, and I want to read the books I'm super excited about. And I don't want to delay them any longer. So anyway, thank you for listening to me, and goodbye to my fellow readers. And may you enjoy your reading. Okay, I'm trying to sound clever, but okay. Bye.